I am a Yank in Sussex. Highdown Hill is a chalk hill located within the South Downs National Park, not far from the town of Worthing, on the West Sussex coast. It's a small hill, 81 meters or 226 feet high, that stands just north of Ferring and is separated from the main bulk of the South Downs to the north. At the base of the hill, there is a car park, toilets, gardens, cafe, hotel, and a restaurant. As I reported in the second part of my video series, What is Sussex?, the hill is the traditional burial place of the kings of Sussex. Highdown's Hill connection with the Kingdom of Sussex put it on my list of places to explore. And finally, on a nice day in September 2023, when it happened that I was driving near the entrance to the site, I decided to stop and have a look. We call this place Highdown Hill, which seems to be a self-contradictory name. It's easily explained, however. Obviously, it's a hill, and it's relatively high compared to its surroundings. The term down is from Old English, or Saxon dun, meaning hill. The word acquired the sense of elevated rolling grassland around the 14th century, which is why it's part of the South Downs. The modern English word dune derives from dun. So the first part of the name, High Dun, means high hill, and since dun became down over the centuries, the fully translated name of this site is High Hill Hill. Highdown Hill's geological history goes back millions of years, of course. It is like the rest of the South Downs and is comprised of chalk. In fact, chalk has been mined from places on Highdown from time to time over many centuries. This is chalk like that seen in the East Sussex Seven Sisters and Kent's White Cliffs of Dover. Highdown Hill's human heritage stretches back into antiquity at least 3,000 years back. The site is believed to have been first used for an enclosure by the late Bronze Age people who lived in the area around 1000 BC. Archaeological work has found evidence of late Bronze Age occupation in the form of remains of huts, cooking pits, and post holes, along with a possible ceremonial artifact deposition. Celtic invaders from the continent brought the Iron Age to Britain, and the enclosure was built out as a hill fort, or camp, during the British Iron Age around 800 BC. Early Iron Age pottery pieces were found on the old turf line below the ramparts, perhaps indicating a period of settlement by the invaders before the ramparts were built. The entrance to the camp is in the eastern bank, and the original gateway was supported by two very large posts, with the post holes that held them preserved. The gateway was later shifted more to the south, but still on the east. Roman occupation after 43 AD is evidenced by the remains of a Roman bathhouse that was found west of the hill fort ramparts. The bathhouse was of particular interest to me due to the archaeological investigations that were done in 1937 and 1938, in which a dig was allowed by the landowner. Many artifacts were discovered, and it was thereby discovered also that it had been constructed beginning in the late 1st or early 2nd century. The layout was fairly similar to others which have been discovered, including both a hot and a cold bath. But it turned out that there was an additional hot room not far to the southwest of the main bath. This one was significantly larger. Unfortunately, due to World War II, no further investigations have been carried out since then. But what was discovered pointed to a possibility of additional Romano-British structures that ought to be located just a few hundred feet from here. After Rome abandoned Britain, leaving the Romanized Celts to their own devices, invaders from northern Germany began arriving in what would become England. In truth, some of them were there already, since Rome had enlisted Saxons and other Germanic men to serve in their armies while Rome occupied it and administered the island. But the new arrivals came for conquest, not as military retirees. Going back all that long ago, and during a time in Britain when documentation is almost non-existent, we can't be entirely sure of the existence of some of the famous and legendary figures, such as King Arthur. But most legends are based in fact, and I mention King Arthur for a reason. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the Saxon war leader named Elle, who conquered the land of what became the Kingdom of Sussex and was its first king, he was defeated at the Battle of Mount Badon by an outnumbered force led by Arthur. And this meant the end of the expansion of the Kingdom of Sussex. When Ella died, probably in 514 AD, and a decade after that battle, he was buried with his weapons within the ramparts of the Highdown Hill fort. While researching further about this battle and its details, I found out that while scholars are sure that it happened, exactly who was there, when it happened, and where it took place are all over the map, figuratively speaking, as well as literally. The Romano-British leader might have been Ambrosius Aurelianus and/or Arthur. The Saxon leader might have been Ella of Sussex or Cerdic of Wessex. The battle may have taken place any time from 482 to 516 AD, and the location is unknown, but candidate locations are the hills around Bath in Somerset, the Iron Age hill fort Liddington Castle near Badbury in Wiltshire, the hill fort called Badbury Rings in Dorset, and Ringsbury Camp, yet another hill fort near Braden in Wiltshire. So in short, we believe the battle took place, but that's about all that can be said for sure. Isn't Middle Ages history fun? Well, back to Highdown. 3 archaeological digs at Highdown uncovered at least one Bronze Age grave, but something like 110 Saxon-era graves. These digs found that the men buried there tended to be fairly young and quite tall, and many were buried with their weapons. So we can probably rely upon it that those buried there were of some recognition as leaders, especially in war, and Ella's grave may very well have been one of those. Highdown Hill apparently fell out of use as a cemetery after Sussex was annexed by the Kingdom of Wessex in 825, and no further memorable use was made of it for around 1,000 years, until the mid-1700s, when a windmill was operated on the hill by the eccentric miller and alleged smuggler John Oliver. Mr. Oliver is quite an interesting character. He inherited the mill from his father, and it was an actual working mill for grinding grain. But it was believed by some that the mill's primary purpose under John Oliver was signaling his smuggling partners in ships off the coast as to whether or not tax officers were in the area. This was allegedly done according to how he set the sails on the windmill. This period of time in southern England was legendary for smuggling, since the government relied upon import taxes to raise a substantial amount of income, and there were many who took advantage of this in order to become rich, selling untaxed tea, brandy, rum, and other commodities. Oliver had his tomb built on the hill a full 27 years before his death in 1793. But the legend was that his tomb's primary use was to store his share of the contraband the ships brought in. He also had his casket constructed at the same time as the tomb and kept it on casters underneath his bed, and this too was believed to store contraband until he could transfer it to his tomb or a buyer. The premise that he probably relied upon was that no one in their right mind would search inside a coffin. Credence was added to this theory because upon hearing of his death, his friends made a beeline for them both. When he finally did die, and he died at the respectable age of 84, he was finally buried in the tomb, where his body remains to this day. The inscription on the tomb reads as follows: "Why start you at that skeleton? 'Tis your own picture that you shun. Alive it did resemble thee, and thou when dead like that shall be." There are a couple of local folk legends concerning the tomb. It is said that if one runs around John Oliver's tomb 12 times backwards at midnight, being careful not to fall over, I guess, the devil will appear. Why anyone would want to summon the devil is rather mysterious to me, but there we are. The other legend is that running 7 times forward around the tomb will summon the ghost of John Oliver, presumably to tell you to clear off and stop bothering him. I haven't heard if anyone has experimented to see if either of these legends are true. Highdown Hill is a great place for walks, and people come from far and wide to enjoy the countryside and the views. At the base of the hill there is a community football ground, as well as a vineland that grows grapes for winemaking. For refreshment, there is the Highdown, an inn and pub. Wrapped around the inn and pub are the Highdown Gardens, located in the former chalk quarry near the main parking lot. It contains a collection of rare plants and trees. It's the achievement of Sir Frederick Stern and his wife, who purchased the 8.52 acres, or 3.45 hectares, in 1909 and worked for 50 years to show that plants would grow on chalk. When Sir Frederick died in 1967, the gardens were donated to the Worthing Borough Council by his wife, Lady Sybil Stern. The council continues to maintain the gardens, and entry is free. Do you know what Morris dancing is? Before I came to the UK, I had never heard of it. This is a kind of folk dance that has been around for quite a few centuries. And why do I bring it up? It's because of this. These are Morris dancers performing up on Highdown on Midsummer's Day, and it's apparently a regular occurrence there on that day. Morris dancing occurs in other places as well, of course. What's the origin of Morris dancing? Nobody seems to know for sure, and there's plenty of theories, but it does go back to the mid-1400s. It's not documented any earlier. I had a great walk up on Highdown on the day that I visited the hill fort, and on subsequent days when I flew the drone over to get some video. The weather was great, the view was grand, and I enjoyed it a lot. Unfortunately, due to my knee experiencing an injury a few months ago, the walk seems to have aggravated that joint, and I paid for that gamble up the hill for several days thereafter. Getting old is not all it's cracked up to be, it turns out, but it's better than the alternative. This has been a production of A Yank in Sussex. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe or follow. Thanks for watching, and may you have a very nice day.